Prabhupada came out to go from his quarters, which was up on the hill, down to the temple for greeting the deities in the morning. So there was supposed to be some kind of a kirtan to usher him down to the temple. Somehow or other, I had a mridanga in my hands, and I'm not a mridanga player either, really. I remember when I first joined, I would play this bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, flap, flap, bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, flap, flap. That was the first mridanga beat that I knew, and then there was bing, ka-ding, bong, bing, ka-ding, bong, bing, ka-ding, you know, like that, simple beat. So I was playing one of those beats, and they had me leading the kirtan. And I was just chanting the simple Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And I was walking right next to Srila Prabhupada. And as I was chanting away at the top of my lungs, trying to do the best I could, Srila Prabhupada just turns to me with a smile and kind of cocked his head back a little bit, looking at me with approval. And he said, Jai. It's the only word Prabhupada ever directly said to me. Yet that one Jai stuck with me. It was a Jai, not just a Jai to me, but it was a Jai in relationship to my endeavor to do Samkirtan, to sing the holy name, Hare Krishna, for the rest of my life.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna. My name is Rama Roy Das. We're going to attempt to speak some of our memories and thoughts, realizations about Sripad Aindra Prabhu. This is the 6th of September, 2012. And we're at 26 2nd Avenue, the place where it all began, Srila Prabhupada's original Krishna conscious temple. And myself, over the past, now into the 6th month, we've been performing for Aindra Prabhu's pleasure a daily Harinam 7 days a week here in New York City, particularly in the Union Square Park for 4 hours every day.
It's a little vague, you know, because when I joined the New York Temple, there were a lot of things going on, but I used to come to the Sunday feast, you know, just for the prasadam, of course, you know, because in those days, you know, we were not following any principles, so we were, from getting the munchies, you know, coming to the temple, fill our bellies with prasadam. That's how it all started. And that's also how I met Aindra, because he would do the bhajans on Sunday and often, you know, outside. And he knew that I was a musician, so he engaged me from the beginning. So this is actually a very important point of the mercy of a Vaishnava, how Srimati Radharani's mercy works through the devotee. Even though I was new, he engaged me, he gave me the mridanga and started playing, even though I didn't know any systematic rhythms, but because I had feeling for music, I was able to improvise, you know. But he really liked that because I could really, give him, you know, what he needed to crank up his kirtan, you know, to make it more ecstatic, you know. So that's how it started. So even though I didn't know it, I was engaged in bhajan at that time, you know, which is actually the highest thing you could do, you know. That's my realization, but at that time I wasn't conscious of it.
Aindra Prabhu came to the New York Temple in the spring of 1981. I had been a devotee for just 3 years. I was 22 years old. And that temple at the time, from March 1981 until October 1982, was 846 7th Avenue, one of the properties that was purchased from the selling and dissolution of the 340 West 55th Street Temple. It was a three-story building in a very good location, right at the top of the Times Square Theater District, but the building was extremely small and ridiculously inadequate for the needs of the New York Yatra. So it was a very much distressed and rather crisis-ridden environment and situation that Aindra came to, and he came with the single intention of performing daily Harinam Sankirtan in New York City. So at that time, he just had some posters mounted either on cardboard or light plywood, and he had them on a hand cart that he would pull down the street, 846 7th Avenue between 54th and 55th Street was at the top of the hill, so he would kind of go down an incline and he would be right in Times Square. And devotees who would assist him at the time were one godbrother named Rasatala in particular. At that time, myself and some godbrothers, all initiated by Sasrup Maharaj, who was the appointed guru for the New York Yatra at the time, we had begun a Back to Godhead magazine collecting party, because at that time, Back to Godhead magazine was not so much favored by the managers of the BBT as a tool of mass street distribution, as it was during Prabhupada's time. New books were being made, such as Coming Back, Chant and Be Happy, Higher Taste, like that. It was an attempt to try to present Krishna consciousness maybe in a different way. So Back to Godhead magazine was not being funded, and it was ultimately in danger of not being printed anymore. So Satsvarup Maharaj, who was the editor-in-chief, appealed to his disciples, ourselves in New York, who were very good collectors, to collect money to save BTG. So doing that in the New York Temple, we made a very clear first recipient of all the free BTGs that all the BTGs that we were responsible for paying for, to give to Aindra Prabhu to take out on his Harinam program.
The New York Temple, so many musicians join, But when it comes to summer, everybody goes out to play music, And then when it's winter, they come back to join, to stay in the temple, So I wasn't like that, because Aindra's mercy, I didn't go back out in the summer. No, he gave me a taste for the holy name, for the chanting, playing madanga, whatever, accompanying. So this was a New York Temple, of course, is the best place to join, because you can see the difference between Maya and like the spiritual reality, So Aindra, he was quite merciful in that aspect. And I remember before this golden flatbed truck program started, Aindra was working day and night trying to prepare this truck, It was a lot of work. He had all this plastic stuff, that he had to paint gold, and complete design, because it was a whole temple that was going out on a flatbed truck. That means when we came out on Harinam, he had to build, set up the temple. It's not that, he just drove the temple in. No, all the parts, that made the truck a temple, that had to be assembled, So it was a whole program, but it was quite ecstatic, because, for the karmis in New York, it was like, wow, a golden temple with Gornitai and devotees making bhajans.
In the spring of 1983, after we had been in the Skimmerhorn Street temple, the present New York temple, Brooklyn, Aindra Prabhu was given a $25,000 donation by the Guru GBC of the time, Bhavananda. And he used that money to purchase a box truck, which is like a small truck that he converted into a North Indian style festooned arched temple in the basement of the Brooklyn temple, which is now a bingo hall slash prashadam hall. At that time it was just like bare cement on the floor, and he would be in there for hours and hours through the late winter, early spring, fashioning the heavy polyurethane castings for the North Indian style architectural festoons and arches he was going to affix to his truck. He did all the work himself, and in the spring of that year he was ready to go, and he had a very wonderful program going out 7:30 in the morning and staying out till 8:30, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. He got sound permits from the police, and he'd park in all different choice locations around the city: West 4th Street in the Greenwich Village, Bryant Park, 42nd Street, Times Square, Herald Square, 34th Street, 57th Street and 5th Avenue, many down in the financial district, Wall Street area where the World Trade Center was. And he'd also go to areas that had large concentration of Indians or those of Indian descent, such as Trinidadian and Guyanese, Liberty Avenue, Ozone Park, Jackson Heights.
I was AWOL, from the American Army when I joined in New York, so I had no choice to hide out in the temple, And actually, I was on book distribution, and they caught me in the Yonkers, and I gave my real identity. So what happened was, they didn't want any Hare Krishnas in the army, so they let me go, So Aindra, when I came back to the temple the same night, I was starving because I hardly ate anything, I mean, there wasn't much you could eat there. So Aindra said, Krishna is testing you. Everybody who joins the New York temple, they get the heaviest test. Just look at Danadhar Maharaj. He also, his parents sent the deprogrammers. They paid deprogrammers for him. But somehow he managed to get out of that, situation by faking it, He was pretending that he was deprogrammed, so everybody started feasting and drinking, and then he ran away, And then later on, he came to the psychiatrist with his parents, and he started preaching about Krishna consciousness.
We would also give magazines to Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, who at that time was just, so to speak, opening up the West African preaching. And myself and godbrother Nam Sankirtan, we were visiting Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in April and May of 2005 as he was departing the planet back home, back to Godhead, and he remembered our hard work and giving him all those BTGs even then. So doing that forged a very good friendship with Aindra. Unfortunately, at that time, my service as a collector kept me, traveling a lot out of New York, and not so much able to go out with Aindra on his Harinam program, although I did on several occasions, as much as I could. I wasn't really aware of how much Aindra was struggling in those years to get a Harinam party together. Sometimes he'd only go out with like 2, 3, or 4 devotees So it came as a surprise to me in December of 1985, one cold day in Columbus Circle. Aindra had his truck set up there. Even in the cold weather, he would go out. He said that I'm moving to Vrindavan and I'm not coming back. And I felt like, wow, why? You have such a nice thing going here. And he related to me his frustrations. And he left. And that was going in January 1986. Of course, that was the glorious 500th anniversary of Lord Chaitanya's appearance year, 1986. And Aindra went to take part in that special celebration in Mayapur. And his actual intention was, in his mind, was to start a similar type of program that he had in New York with a mobile preaching yatra. But circumstances were such that when he went to Vrindavan and he saw there was no 24-hour kirtan going there, and he was inspired by one elder friend and associate of Prabhupada, Bakaji. He was like the accountant, and he had a dream where Prabhupada appeared to him and said, "Why is there no 24-hour kirtan in my temple?" And he came to Aindra all upset, fresh from having this dream, with tears in his eyes. And Aindra took it as prophetic that out of all the people he could be telling about this dream, he came to me to tell me about this. And I got so much caught up in the emotion, his emotion, that Aindra is saying, also started to cry. And he took it as a sign that Prabhupada wants him to start the 24-hour kirtan.
I ended up getting initiation from Harikesh Maharaj because he came to New York at the time. And so I ended up going to Switzerland to get initiated. But I didn't come back to New York afterwards. I ended up staying in Switzerland and in Germany. And Aindra kept writing letters or telling the devotees to try to get me there, But I met Aindra in 1986 in Mayapur, my first time in India. And I got the Brahman initiation during that time. And what was funny, he recorded some melodies for me on the harmonium because he knew that, of course, I'm going to end up singing bhajan also. So he wanted me to start learning. And then he told me he had a plan to make a bus, like Radha Damodar, bus traveling around India, just doing kirtan. And then I heard somehow Krishna changed that plan, which ended up being the 24-hour kirtan. Because I heard he was doing bhajan every day in the temple at Krishna Balaram Mandir, and some Bengalis, some devotees would participate. And then Kormarupa, who was my bhakta leader in New York, he was also in Vrindavan at the time, he came to Aindra and said, actually, it was Prabhupada's desire to maintain this 24-hour kirtan. But because of mismanagement, the 24-hour kirtan has disappeared. So I think Krishna has brought you here to fire it up again. So that's why Aindra came there. But afterwards, he used to write me a lot of letters, or not letters, but notes, to devotees in Germany. Tell Gopinath to come and help me. When is he going to come? And for me, it was difficult because as brahmachari, I was not a good collector. So, I was really dependent on the temple to give me the money to go to Vrindavan. Without that mercy, I would never have been able to join 24-hour kirtan. But it all started with desire, because before Krishna arranged for me to come to Vrindavan, I heard some cassette tapes. In those days we had cassettes. So there was a cassette tape of Nitai. Nitai Das. He was singing this melody, that really, really touched my heart. The famous now, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I think you must have heard this melody before. But when I heard that, I was right in Vrindavan. I was putting Gaur Nitai to sleep, on the altar. So Gornitai, he knew exactly. They knew my desire, because my heart was in Vrindavan, hearing this devotee sing like that.
So myself, that visit in 1986 was very profound for me, and I made it a very solid determination that I would return to India, particularly Vrindavan, every year. And as a collector, you know, there was no problem with having money. It's just a question of, so to speak, exerting my intention and desire to my quote-unquote authorities of the time, you know. And also by then the movement, at least in North America, had, so to speak, entered into a serious crisis with zonal guru reform and various other situations. So my intention was I would visit Vrindavan and I would spend time with Aindra every year. I was very much impressed with Aindra's determination in those years, the mid and late 80s. There was hardly anyone in Vrindavan, and it was very, very austere. There wasn't proper drinking water. There was no such thing as air conditioning. There wasn't even air coolers, the machines that work on the principle of, you know, blowing cold water vapor. You know, Aindra didn't even have that. He would regularly get prickly heat. His body was light-skinned, so, you know, he would get heat rashes and prickly heat. And many times he would chant himself, have to be chanting 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Of course, there was some blackmailing before that happened, because when my guru was standing before the deities, Radha Madan Mohan, I was standing behind him. And I was praying to Radharani, to Krishna, please let him know. I want to go to Vrindavan and join the 24-hour kirtan. And if you don't let him know, I will become the biggest Mayavadi you will ever see. You know? And this way, I actually blackmailed Krishna, but somehow he listened, you know, and allowed me to come to Vrindavan. And that's when the real nectar started. Of course, in the beginning, when I stayed in the 24-hour kirtan, I was staying in the same room with Aindra, because there was a tight relationship, but somehow or other I couldn't stay there for long because he was just an avaduta, you know, too much of an avaduta, and I also didn't want to feel superior towards the other kirtaniyas. I wanted to be with him, you know, just like, you know, because I want to have the same relation. I didn't want him to think that I say, somebody more important, you know, that's why I'm staying there. But the other reasons also, I want to have a closer relation with all the other kirtaniyas also. So Aindra said, oh, you're moving away from home, but close to home. Because the kirtan ashram was right next door to him. There was a door, you know. I still had the keys to the deities, to his room, you know, so I could come in his room whenever I wanted.
I remember perhaps one of the most glorious years of that time was I spent 4 months with him in the winter and spring of 1990, and he was the dressing pujari for Radhashama Sundar every day. We would dress Radhashama Sundar every day. And he would take a team of us. I remember there was me, there was Nitai, who was one of the early members of the 24-hour Kirtan department. He's famous for on Vrindavan Mellows 1 singing the tune Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's become a very popular tune all throughout ISKCON, but that's actually, in Aindra's words, credited to Nitai. He even called it Nitai's tune. And one devotee named Gopinath, who now lives in Bali, Indonesia, he was in the New York temple when Aindra was there. and myself, we would all like go and assist Aindra dressing Radha Shyama. I was dressing the gopis, Lalita and Vishaka. So I was combining doing Pujari service with Aindra and also chanting with him in the temple, and also spending, I would spend like the whole afternoon with him. He would be doing his deity worship.
Actually, there was only 3 months I was supposed to stay, but I extended my visa into 6 months. So Satchidananda Swami, he came back to Germany alone. So indicating, that my future was in 24-hour Kirtan Vrindavan. But after 6 months, I came back, to Germany, and wow, so much separation from the service I was doing there. Where else in the world can you chant 24-hour Kirtan, So then I wrote a letter to my guru, because he was at Nishinga Chalam, Nishingadev Temple in Germany. And a god brother of mine, Krishna Das, he advised me, just write him a letter. That's all you can do. So I was cooking for the deities, and I wrote him a letter, stating the 24-hour Kirtan, just like Prabhupada. How many times do you find Maha Mantra in Prabhupada's purports? So many times you heard about 24-hour Kirtan in my letter. So at one point I gave up, because I know it was a preaching movement, nobody's going to give me a chance, So at one point I got the letter back, and my guru wrote on the same letter. But I didn't believe it, his servant brought me the letter. You should read it, you should read it. So now I know he said no. Here's all preaching, and nobody's, allowed to become Babaji in Vrindavan. So then he said, read it. He said, yes. So I looked at the letter, and in the letter it said, yeah, get an entry visa into India and stay until you can't stay anymore. Then I jumped up in the air, a couple of meters in the air, in the middle of the offering. Everybody was looking, is this guy crazy or what, And I said, Vrindavan Dham ki jai, I was like ready to go,
I remember he would have me read to him different books, and at that time there were very few, duly translated by ISKCON or friends of ISKCON books of the Goswamis. So we were mostly like reading Gaudiya Math translations, and particularly I remember we were reading Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and Aindra was very much ecstatic to hear that book, and he was very much desirous of understanding his eternal identity with Krishna, and he would express his feelings and determinations, and I remember he would cry. It was very, very powerful. That became a service that I did for Aindra over the years, reading to him physically, in his presence while he was doing his deity worship, and also he commissioned me to read and record many of the epic Goswami literatures, particularly Govinda Lilamrita, Krishna Bhavanamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in particular. The Astakalya Leela books, these are the two most important. Aindra was very, very fond of hearing Radha and Krishna's Astakalya Leela. Also books describing the intricacies of the Madhurya Ras, most especially Ujjvala Nilamani by Srila Rupa Goswami. Ananda Vrindavan Champu, of course the plays by Rupa Goswami, Vidagna Madhava, Lalita Madhava. I read for Aindra the complete 17 Sataka Vrindavan Mahimamrita by Prapodananda Saraswati. Also, Aindra was very fond of Mukta Charita, the story of the pearls, by Raghunath Das Goswami. Prema Samputa, the love locket, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur.
I have some leelas about some Shaligram Shila worship, because sometimes I had to turn in some of my kirtan hours, to do some Shaligram Shila worship. especially if Aindra had to go to Delhi, because we were producing cassettes, for selling to get donations from the bhajan, So sometimes it would take me hours because he had hundreds of shilas, because a lot of devotees, they would leave their shilas with him. We became like the babysitters, for Krishna. We had to take care of all these shilas. And for me, it took me almost half an hour to offer archamas to so many shilas. But that was also a type of mercy. But one shila, one Shaligram shila was not worshipped yet. And I didn't know. So I offered archama, and then later on I heard Aindra said, well, if you worship it, then it's your shila, But then there was another devotee, his name was Premaras, he was visiting Vrindavan. He said, no, it's not like that, It's not like that, You cannot force somebody to accept it, Because in those days I was only into doing bhajan. The only worship I would do, that was kirtan, So that was a short part of that lila, but there was also some more really special lilas I cannot really explain. He had a friend in New York. I remember this Indian devotee. His name was Pradeep, And Pradeep, he once asked me, "Hey, can you give me this Gayatri mantra because I need it for my Radha Krishna? I have Radha Krishna deities, And innocently, I didn't have any idea. I said, "Okay, I'll give you the mantra. I know it, Wrote it down, just give it to him, And then later, I told Aindra about it, Aindra, what he told me? You know what? You just gave him Brahmana initiation. I said, wow, no, that can't be,
Aindra would say about his own desire to worship so many deities. At the final count, he had, I believe the number is, it's either 2,900, 29 some hundred Shalagram Shilas, and 28 other deities, Govardhan Shilas, his Nitai Sachi Sutta, his deity of Radharani, his original deities of Little Gaur Nitai, and then later he made a deity of Janava, and Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta. Actually, Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta and his small Gaur Nitai deities were with him on his preaching yatra in New York City, and they came with him also. Those were his original deities. So he was saying that my desire, because I worship my deities for minimum 3 to 4 hours every day, so this gives me a chance to hear about Krishna's pastimes. And indeed, of course, his own realization and spontaneous awareness of Radha and Krishna's Astakali Leela, that certainly was there in his perfected consciousness. But in terms of hearing the Goswami literatures again and again, repeatedly and repeatedly, he practically memorized them. And this is interesting because Aindra would say himself his ability to memorize, it was very poor. He was not good at Sanskrit. He would have someone else read the verse if he gave class. During the time 1999, 2000, 2001, under the administration of Mahaman Das as the temple president of Vrindavan, and also the natural place in the daily Bhagavatam reading in the temple room was the 10th canto. Aindra gave many wonderful classes on the Rasa Leela chapters 29 through 33 of the 10th canto. There's some very treasured recordings of those classes.
Aindra, he would complain a lot about having not enough manpower, in the 24-hour kirtan. And sometimes I helped him get some devotees from Mayapur, because my guru, he was at that time responsible for Mayapur, or he had some connections, so I could send some Bengali devotees to join, But he did not always have the best relationship with the Bengali devotees. So at one point they had left. So then at one point I told Aindra, seriously, I was actually serious. I told him, why don't you just initiate your own disciples, so you have enough people to do the kirtan. And then he said, this is not funny, you coming up with this kind of jokes. I said, this is not a joke, this is solution, I said, And then he said, do you know, if you can't go back to Godhead until you liberate everybody you initiate. So, it's not a good idea, he said, Srila Prabhupada, he initiated one disciple, and he always had to come back for him because he just doesn't surrender at one point. And Srila Prabhupada said, when are you going to surrender? I came back for you 5 times already. So he gave this example. So then it was understandable, yeah. Of course, we wanted other people go back to Godhead, but we should also be concerned with ourselves, because you can't save anybody unless you save yourself. Or learn to save yourself. You have to learn how to swim first before trying to save anybody. So that was a lot of things like Leela. Since I'm in Vrindavan in my mind right now, I think there's another instance. Once somebody asked Aindra to come and do kirtan outside of Vrindavan in a village, the special village, but Aindra had other things to do, so he refused, and they kept bothering him, And I was there with Ananda Chaitanya and myself, we were like, at that time, prominent kirtanias. So Aindra said, I want to send these two, Gopinath and Ananda Chaitanya, he said. He said, no, we want you. They said, you are the king of kirtan, So then Aindra said, yes, but the king, he could also send his prince. And when I heard that, I really felt, I felt good in my heart that he's actually, he's giving me some faith in myself, You can do it, So myself, Ananda Chaitanya, and a few other devotees, maybe 5 or 6 devotees, we went to that village. We made a kirtan. Even though we were only 6 people, it sounded like 100, We were like, we blew that village away, It's like, wow, that was Krishna's mercy. So he can empower you. I think he was the one who was empowering me to play Madanga back in New York. Because where did I have the idea what to play or when to play? I just played, So that's also an important point, in the Kirtaniya. He can also empower his people, to play more than they can. It's all Krishna's mercy, ultimately.
Aindra's kirtans were always increasing and becoming more deep and more profound with spiritual potency, spiritual beauty. Aindra was always increasing his vernacular or vocabulary of ragas or melodies. And if you look at the tunes that Aindra was singing over the years, there was always new ones were being brought forward. Aindra would either discover a tune or compose a tune or a combination of both of a particular tune, and he would relish the bhav of that tune for some period, usually, months or part of a year. And then when he was felt sufficiently like he had utilized or worshipped that tune properly, then he would chant another one. Another one would come. That all within the ever-increasing standard vocabulary of the tunes that Aindra had at his command.
Aindra Prabhu, he was quite merciful in the sense that he used to bring me to Harini Kunj. Harini Kunj Vrindavan, December, end of Kartik, all the professional Bengali kirtaniyas, they come to Harini Kunj. And I heard even Krishnadas Baba, the godbrother of Prabhupada, he used to go there also. And his godbrothers used to criticize, man, these people are professionals, they're just doing it for money. You know what Krishnadas Babaji said? He said, well, yeah, but I need a few good melodies to offer to Krishna. And this is where I get them, So now we know also the secret where a lot of melodies come from, So he used to bring me there to watch the professional Madanga players, Wow, they play some really good beats. Of course, I've also been trained by Babalu in the basis of Madanga, but you also need some experienced Madanga players to show you how to use it in the kirtan. So, that I got a lot of mercy through that, to try out all these different rhythms, So That was actually that was the nectar, you know. All this we could share with devotees, and he always used to give me like I used to go to Radhakund every Ekadasi to do bhajan with the Babajis, you know, and he always gave me the fare or the money to go there because he knew it was important for my spiritual development to do kirtan in other places also, bhajan to get association, you know, of Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So that was very nice of him. He also encouraged it, you know, because I used to go and devotees used to come with me, but at one point, you know, I was going alone, like, you know, to be steady in your bhakti, you have to be determined, even if you go alone. It's very important. So there are a lot of, we've been to a lot of these leelas. Oh yeah, there was also a special leela with this shaligrama. He told me that personally. Aindra, he really loved his Gopal shaligram, big shaligram shila, you know, painted with eyes, and it looked very sweet. You know, one day Aindra, he was feeling so much love for his shaligram shila. He said that he grabbed the shila and wanted to put it to his head, you know. And then Aindra said, you know what happened? Well, shortly before I could put it to my head, he seen these two eyes from Gopal looking at him. You forgot to do your archam. You know. So then Aindra said, sorry. So Aindra did his archam, and then these were all like personal things that were coming upon us, you know. So he used a lot of these examples. I mean, I remember one time we were doing bhajan, 24-hour kirtan, and you know, I'm like on the madanga. Sometimes I like to experiment or like to play, like, you know, all the rhythms, you know. And one time he said, "Yeah, you're just like the drummer from Jimi Hendrix, you know, Mitch Mitchell. He always has to do a drum solo before he gets into the song, you know, because to get it out of him, you know, to get the passion out, you know." And then I looked at him, you know, and then he looked at me and smiled. I knew that would get you, you know.
Being in kirtan with Aindra was very much like being on an adventure. The heart of Radha and Krishna and their emotions and feelings in a given leela, that was being manifest in Aindra's kirtan. And especially enjoyable was when Aindra would do kirtan at a time when there was no time limit. Like his standard time to do kirtan was prior to the Gora Artik in the temple, which in the wintertime would stop at 6:30 for the Artik, or in the summertime at Shiva Ratri to the first day of Kartik, that summer schedule. And from Kartik to Shiva Ratri, basically mid-October until late February is the winter schedule. So he would ideally like to come for an hour, but invariably he'd be late. Sometimes he'd have to like reform himself. If it got down to like 20 or 25 minutes, he'd have to snap out, all right, no, like that. But on times when, like Ekadasi, chanting for Ekadasi in the evening, that is something that he started doing more and more in later years. And solar eclipses, he could chant as long as he could, which would be like 3.5, 4 hours. It would be like a very much progressive adventure where Aindra would take us in his kirtan. It's because Aindra was chanting on the Prema Shudanam platform. You were telling me that Aindra revealed to you that Lalita Devi had instructed him how to sing for the pleasure of Radha and Krishna, Radha Shama Sundar.
Now, the real leelas are coming out automatically to my mind right now is Chaturmasha. And I did also this tapasya with him, you know. It's a wonder that I could still become a grihastha after all that tapasya. but it is, it's like, you know, we did the Chaturmas, but, you know, the real Chaturmas, you know, like eating after sundown, only rice and dal cooked with water, with a little bit of ghee, no spices, no salt, no nothing. And eating directly from the ground with your hands on your back, you know, and bending all the way down. And you can only go down one time. It means you have to eat everything a handful, like, before you boil it, there has to be a handful of both, I think, mung dal and rice. So when you go down, you have to eat everything, and then when you finish, you can come back up and drink water, of course. But they say that through doing this, you get the realization, even human beings, the activity of eating for human being is also animal instinct, because when you eat like that. And when I was doing that, I was doing it for 4 months, the whole Chaturmasya. Right next to Aindra, we would go down, eat, and then when we came back up, one day we came back up and we looked at each other and started laughing because we were so intoxicated. Can you imagine how intoxicated you can get by doing this kind of tapasya in the Holy Dham, in Vrindavan itself, It's like, it was a transcendental trip, I was like, my mind was just laughing. Aindra looked at me, I looked at him, we just started laughing like anything. So, what are we doing here, And then, at one point, my guru came to Vrindavan and he noticed I was getting skinny, so he told me, you got to eat, you have to eat, I said, yeah, I'm just doing Chaturmas. He said, I don't care what you're doing, you have to eat, and now, So then I was forced to stop, and then Aindra, he didn't like that, The guru was advising me that, because he just was worried because I looked skinny,
So we all knew that Aindra had very much accessed the mercy of Srimati Radharani in a very profound, powerful way. And I myself witnessed the transformation from his New York days to here, to Vrindavan. Two of my godbrothers who were with me on the Back to Godhead magazine collecting party, giving the BTGs to Aindra in the early and mid-'80s, they had not seen Aindra since he left New York for the first time 20 years later in 1986. And they were like dumbfounded and awestruck to see his transformation. They were simply amazed. There's a very nice video that they made, which is available. They interviewed in Aindra's room, and they expressed their astonishment. So Aindra was always very, very progressive. Certainly his one-pointed determination and practically unmatched and unseen and unprecedented nishtha, fixity, determination to achieve the ultimate goal of life and go back home, back to Godhead in one lifetime. And he would stress again and again, I'm not anyone special. I'm just as sinful as everyone else, but enough sumedhasaha has entered my brain to realize that there's a Yuga Dharma and that I'm one of the Kali Yuga creatures meant to take advantage of the Yuga Dharma.
Yeah, of course, he spent a lot of time going to buying flowers. I don't know, in the end, people were bringing him the flowers, but he used to go to the market all the time. And he used to dream. He dreamed that he was in that he was in New York buying flowers for Krishna in Vrindavan, really strange dreams like that. He told me about it. And it was like, I also dreamed a lot of Vrindavan shortly before he left also. So many times I was dreaming I was with him in Vrindavan. And even while staying in Vrindavan, I used to dream that I was sitting down in Krishna Balaram temple doing 24-hour kirtan. It's like you completely get brainwashed. It's like, I remember this dream. I think I just came back from the West, and I was doing bhajan, 24-hour kirtan, but it was in a dream. And then I was sleeping in the kirtan ashram, actually. And then I also dreamt that I was on my way trying to reach Vrindavan and afraid to miss the plane or whatever. It was a complete stress situation. And then when I woke up, then I realized, oh, I'm in Vrindavan. Thank God, So, but then in another dream, I was just doing bhajan, and I seen devotees coming from the West. How they come to visit Vrindavan during the festival times, And that look in their eyes, like their eyes are glazing, Wow, this is like Goloka, the first time you come in Vrindavan, you get this, what they call this really transcendental light, that really lets you see this is Vrindavan. Okay, it may last a few days, and then you're back in Maya, of course, but the idea is, to maintain this, So then yeah, when I was in that dream, I looked at these devotees and then I was praying to Krishna, oh, please don't let me leave Vrindavan, at least in my heart. Because even if I have to leave with my body, at least my heart will remain there. So it's a very important preaching point for the devotees. They should know this is the actual secret. The reason why I spent all those years in Vrindavan is actually to share it with devotees outside Vrindavan. Of course, through bhajan and kirtan. This is the first time I actually trying to do it like this in the interview. But this is a very important aspect because I heard about this. Lokanath Maharaj spoke to Aindra about this, and this theory I had for a long time, but didn't discuss with devotees very much because nobody would understand it. But then when I heard that Aindra said to Lokanath Maharaj that in a dream he seen Prabhupada because he had stopped his book distribution back in America, and he felt guilty, but he was arranging this festival of India. So Srila Prabhupada came in a dream. He said, don't worry, this what you're doing is also preaching, And in the end, they had this one point which really satisfied me in my heart after all these years having faith in the holy name. He said that the best Gosti Anandi is a Bhajan Anandi. And when I heard that, wow, that really hit me really hard. All those years, I was feeling the same thing. One should be absorbed in Krishna before he can give Krishna to others. So this is a logical thing. We are not only Gosti Anandis, we are Bhajan Anandis also.
And he would say, I have the experience of 12, 13, 14-hour days, Harinam days. You do that and see what happens to you. And he would say, I always remember a letter that was sent by Prabhupada to our Q Street, D.C. temple president in 1974 at the time, Damodar Prabhu, saying, I'm so much pleased with your 14-hour-a-day Sankirtan days. So Aindra had very firm faith and total realization as to the supreme power of the Maha Mantra, and it always disturbed him and made him upset that the Harinam Sankirtan wasn't being kept up as he knew that it should be. There's the famous address he made in Varshana in 2009. Please remember, and I beseech you again and again, please remember, grassroots Harinam Sankirtan revolution. Revolution means revolution. We have to turn this movement inside out, upside down, to do what it takes to bring Harinam Sankirtan back into its rightful place of dignity in the forefront of this Hare Krishna movement. It's so essential for the proper growth of this movement. So myself, having performed, trying to serve Aindra by doing a daily Harinam here in New York City, every day in the same place, we just see how many people are being transformed by the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra.
When I visited Vrindavan, after 12 years, I stayed away. You can imagine, that's a long time. As soon as I met Aindra, a 24-hour kirtan, he recognized me immediately, embraced me, asked me, oh, do you still play Madanga? Of course, and then I played Madanga for him. It was more like a reunited type of thing, and then what happened was I wanted to buy a Esraj, but I didn't want to go to Delhi. I just want to spend time in Vrindavan, so I came to the ID. I went to Aindra and said, why don't you let me just give you a big donation and you give me the Esraj? He said, yeah, that's a good idea. So he gave me the Esraj. He put the money at the feet of Gornitai, And then he said, yeah, I have to look for it, because, it's piled up somewhere, in a storage thing, because there hasn't been any people. You know what, Esraj is like a violin type instrument. I used to play for him, even in New York I did. So what happened was he found it, and then I thought, oh, okay, now the deal is finished. So before giving me the Esraj, she told me, can you record some Esraj tracks for my new CD, I said, wow, I guess it wasn't that easy to get it. So then I sat down, then he gave me some melody, I never heard this before. I wanted this new composition. So Esraj is anyway supposed to play behind the melody, but still, it felt strange to try to accompany a melody that you don't know. So you you cannot make any guess. You know, you have to really wait. You know, to the next part of the melody comes. So I helped him, you know, with that recording, and then it was finished. But then again, he invited me up to his room to talk, you know, and he was talking about his Harinam revolution theory, you know, which I was also convinced of. Of all these years, I noticed that the Harinam and the Kirtan sort of becoming like the background. And all kinds of philosophies, you know, everybody wants to become big Brahmanas, and nobody wants to become Vaishnavas. You know. I said, hey, this is completely Maya, you know. I told Aindra, you know, how is this possible? You know, Srila Prabhupada translated Bhagavad Gita so that people would, devotees would perform devotional service. And all the other Bhagavad Gitas, they don't inspire that, you know. They inspire you, you know, go in the Brahma Jyoti, or, you know, become Brahman or whatever, you know, but it doesn't inspire you to service. And what is the best way to serve? You have to ask Krishna, you know, and that was the Maha Mantra, this Hare Krishna mantra. So I told Aindra, I can't believe this, you know, it was never this way when I joined, you know, why is it this way now, you know? And then, he said the same thing, you know, about this Harinam revolution. It's actually where it's at, you know, devotees, they have to take it seriously, because if they don't, it just gets in the background, you know, and other things come in the foreground, which is not so good. Srila Prabhupada also said that if this happens, there will be no more Hari Hari Bol, he said, you know.
Aindra, when Aindra would speak the philosophy, time would stand still, and you felt that you were entering into a very, into a very special dimension, Radha and Krishna's sacred space. And he could speak unlimitedly in great detail, but it was never like, you never felt it was unnecessary or too much, but it was just like one thing after the other, just holding you spellbound, you know, all very important and all essentially correct, everything that he would say.
Back on this point, he also mentioned that, I've seen it a lot on YouTube, he said, because a lot of people think Harinam doesn't bring any finances or stuff like that, which is an illusion. It does bring the finances, but we don't know how it's bringing the finances. Because I remember that place, you know, where Nishingadev temple was in Germany. The whole temple, they had a 24-hour kirtan marathon for 1 month. Pujaris, cooks, everybody did, you know, and they had to sacrifice their sleep sometimes to be able to participate. And you know what happened at the end of the month? They stopped at the end of the month because they could only do it for 1 month, because they didn't have, you know, permanent people who could only do bhajan. So what happened after 1 month? One real rich man came and he gave a gigantic donation to the temple. So we should not think like that, you know. Harinam is always giving prosperity, not only money, everything. It's giving everything.
Aindra says that my room is non-different than Nitya Navadweep because of his Nitai Sachi Sutta. Aindra's deity's Nitai Sachi Sutta, he told the story many times. People would ask him, but I have a recording. He was at a home program at Madhu Radhapati's house on the 30th of March, 2010. And they asked, how did you acquire Nitai Sachi Sutta? And he said, I stole them, fair and square. So the story is that Dina Bandhu and Pundarik Vidyanidhi, a Prabhupada disciple, who was there at the time, they had Nitai Sachi Sutta made to put on a Vrindavan preaching bus that would travel around North India. So preaching buses in India, they have like a glass enclosure in the back with the deities there so people can see them in view. So on I believe it's a maiden voyage, the bus had gotten into an accident and was left in an unmovable condition on the side of an Indian road in the summertime for like 5 days while a repair had attempted to be made. So the deities were in that glass enclosure, you know, not being attended to or taken care of on the side of a road, you know. So when the bus finally came back and Aindra had come to know of their mistreatment, he promptly went down and took the deities out of the bus and brought them up to his room. And Aindra's, you know, so to speak, chastisement, or even just his demeanor and his taking so seriously the apparat to the deities, he was just seeing them who they really were. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda personally being neglected like that, and he was taking all care for them, that when it came time for the bus to go out again, nobody even attempted to go to Aindra and say, return the deities. So on that very first voyage away from the temple after the bus had been repaired, it got into a very bad accident, you know, falling over an incline and rolling over and over and completely destroying. So everyone at that point knew that Aindra had done the right thing, because if the deities had been on the bus, they wouldn't have made it.
Now, Aindra, he had this humility, you know, that I know. I mean, sure, he could become angry and this and that, you know, but he did have humility, because I remember when we recorded Chintamani Nam. I remember he didn't have a name, you know. I thought of the name, oh, Chintamani Nam, you know, that sounds cool. Chintamani Stone, you know, the story of the Chintamani Stone and connecting with the Holy Name. So he accepted the name. But then, you know, I had one tune, I remember, yeah, I guess that was my only hit, the 24-hour kirtan. You must have heard it before. It's Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So that was my hit. But I say that those were the golden days for me, because this tune connects me with Aindra, because we had the best times together, you know. Like we got this tune from Harini Kunj also, but singing this tune, you know, and recording it, it was all a nice time, you know. And I remember what happened when I recorded this tune. We didn't have anybody to play madanga, you know, and for me to dub the madanga in would be more work. So the only solution was that Aindra played madanga on this recording, you know. So I said, wow, you know, he's playing madanga, and I was like, this is quite. I felt obliged, you know. I was, wow, you know, he never played madanga for me, you know, but in this case he did, you know.
Always beg you, please, to Nitai Sachi Sutta, please never leave me. He also, for him, Shalagram Shila was Sham Sundar Krishna. He would say, in answer to the question, why you have so many, he says, there's no limit to how much blackishness I can have in my life. He could do the dressing of Radha Shama Sundar, and then in the recent years, most of the years, he was only dressing on Saturday and Sunday. So he very much missed having that Anga Sangha, that bodily association, the contact with the limbs, the bodily limbs of Shama Sundar. So Shalagram Shila for him was a way of pacifying that feeling of separation. And he gave a promise to any Shalagram Shila that would come to him, because Shalagram Shila is from Kali Gandaki up in the Himalayan mountains in Nepal, that they've come to be with me in Vrindavan. And I promise any Shila that comes to me will always stay with me. Devotees would come, even very high-ranking devotees, begging for Shalagram Shilas from Aindra, and Aindra would just refuse on that basis. He would never give away his deities. So now the determination of those caring for Aindra's deities on his behalf are also where that policy is adopted, that no Shilas will be dispatched or given away to anyone for any reason, because these are Aindra's deities. That became a very regular, steady feature from like the late 90s onward that I remember. After Aindra's kirtan time, after the Gaur Artik, Aindra would return to his room. His kirtan would end. he would stay midway through the artik. He would say at least till the ghee lamp is passed around. And he'd go to his room. Of course, there was, especially in the later years, the high likelihood of him and is using the word getting snagged between the corridor between the Radha Shama Sundar's side of the temple and the Gurukul building. He would go upstairs and he would chant his Gayatri mantras. He would chant extra mantras. Usually it would take him a good 20 minutes or more to chant his Gayatri. And there would usually be, devotees wishing to take his counsel, have his darshan. And Aindra was very, very generous in speaking to them at length. I have one conversation with one devotee. He came at 7:30 in the morning and 7:30 in the evening, and Aindra speak to him continuously all the way till midnight for 3.5 hours. It's not a, say, you sometimes you want to get the association or darshan of an advanced devotee or a senior devotee, but they have very little time for you. But with Aindra, it was and you feel frustrated. But with Aindra, it was the opposite. You'd get so much that it was so far beyond your expectation, and your capacity to take it in was. And some devotees would say, "I have to go now," and said, "Okay, you can go, but first I got it." And then another 40 minutes goes by, but I really have to go now. That's all right, but then and talk again, and another hour goes by. So Aindra was like, if God wants to give you with his 10 hands, what can you take with your 2? Aindra would always inspire devotees to aim high, to get to the ultimate goal of their life, Krishna Prema. Big topic would always be a guru issue, who was the proper spiritual master and how to be a proper disciple. And he would usually be in the midst of doing his deity worship or preparing bhoga for his deities. Conversations would go on. Or sometimes in the evening, we would just go and read. I would read, some nice book out loud, and Aindra would be doing his deity worship, and other devotees would come, and sometimes Aindra would speak some realization or probe more deeply into the subject matter that he was hearing. Created a very wonderful atmosphere of, you felt completely sheltered and completely safe in Aindra's room. And the extraordinary thing about Aindra was that he's on the topmost level of Krishna consciousness, yet at the same time he was very much giving his friendship to you on a very, seemingly equal level. Aindra very much respected and highly regarded his friends, those who chose to associate with him, and he was always very loyal and always concerned for them.
Chastised me one time. I remember I was criticizing. You know how it is when you stay in Vrindavan. Sometimes they make this flat rice with curry sauce, but it's like horrible. It's like so dry. To renounce. I used to complain about that. I complained about it. Of course, I was criticizing prasadam because I broke one of my teeth on the stones. That was inside there. So that's confirmed. But Aindra said. He said, don't criticize prasadam, like that. I'll slap you if you do that, And I remember he once slapped a devotee. I was shocked. Wasn't funny. His devotee's name was Om Tat Sat. He's a disciple of Lokanath Maharaj, a very dark devotee from South India. He plays kartals but he has problems playing kartals slow enough, you know. His mind is like, you know, he can't control it, you know. And one time, Aindra, he just, you know, he lost it, you know. He just slapped him, you know, and then he started playing kartals normal again. But I was shocked, you know. I said, wow, you know, do that, you know. And he chastised Nitai a lot also, you know, because of the these material desires, you know, that we have. I first said to my wife, she said, "Oh, it's not good to mention this, but somehow I think Krishna wants this, you know, because it's funny. It's like Nitai used to study a lot of Sanskrit, you know, and then Aindra, he came with this, you know, heavy, you know, quote, say, yeah, this Sanskrit doesn't help you control your genitals, like he said like that, you know. Yeah, Nitai, he looked away, you know, like Indian devotee, you know. Of course, he was right, you know, but it came at a very like time that you don't expect it. I mean, usually he comes at that time. I remember during Prabhupada's, I think, when is that disappearance, where all the Prabhupada disciples, they make their speech? Disappearance, or not? I think, yeah, it's usually in Kartik. So during the disappearance, I heard like that Aindra, he came up, you know, and he said, this was really heavy, you know, I mean, I don't know how he came into the subject matter, but he said, Srila Prabhupada said to the GBC, he said, the difference between me and you is if I walk into a room full of pretty naked women, I don't get agitated, he said. You know, and then when, of course, people, they were startled to hear this, but he often gave lectures also like that. When I joined in New York, he once said, that when you become a Grihastha, it's just you know, like a perversion of you want to be Radha and Krishna together. Well, he's right about that. And I'm a Grihastha. I don't feel any guilt about that. You know, that's what Grihastha means. If you see in India when they marry, you know, the man, he looks like Krishna and the woman is dressed up like Radha, you know, it's like Lakshmi Narayan. It's supposed to be like that. I mean, otherwise what's the use of becoming Grihastha if you don't have that sense? But because Aindra said that, you know, people think, oh, this is too much. And he once said that in a lecture in Vrindavan, and it was a GBC Grihastha, he felt offended, you know, and then he said, don't let Aindra give any more lectures. You know what happened? That devotee, I heard, he fell down anyway, and Aindra was giving lectures again. So, you know, Krishna arranges for that, you know. Of course, there are some harsh moments that I experienced that had also influence on my life. You know, Aindra, he once called me into his room. He said, do you remember in New York there was a devotee? His name is Fakreshwar Pandit. He was a temple commander at the time. So I said, I remember. Yeah, well, devotees, they wrote me a letter to ask me to forgive him. Then I said, forgive him for what? You know, and then Aindra told me what he did. And I wish he never told me this, because it also had a bad influence on me. Of course, that influence is gone now. But what happened was, he said he had some special wood, you know, he was saving to build his stage, flatbed truck, you know, the Golden Temple stage. I think it's a call, but they can cancel it. Kan gewoon op, yeah. And you know, there was a flatbed stage program. So Aindra was saving a lot of things. You know what, for Kreshwar Pandit, he threw it in the dumpster, you know. And then Aindra, you know, he knew about it. He went to the dumpster to pull it out, you know. And then for Kreshwar Pandit came, you know, feeling guilty, you know, because Aindra is, you know, pulling this wood or whatever was out of the dumpster. And then for Kreshwar Pandit became, you know, aggressive, like start pushing Aindra on his chest, you know, like bullying him, you know, like, you know, pushing in his chest, you know. And then Aindra, he became angry. He took his Brahmin thread, you know, and he said, I curse you that you don't have any position again, you know, in any temple, you know. And then, and that was the end of that story. And then later I heard, you know, his wife left him, you know, he went completely down, you know. And I think Aindra forgives him because, you know, he's a Vaishnava, definitely.
Well, of course, Aindra, he created a department in the temple, the 24-hour Kirtan department, and he, you know, in the Gurukul building, it was just like a bare cement floor to sleep on. So Aindra himself, he created, bunk beds to utilize, the space in those rooms to the maximum and give devotees like a kind of comfortable living area, that like on the bunk he installed private individual electric fan and chattai straw shades that could be pulled up and down so you could have your privacy inside a little shelf desk with your own private lamp. He was very much looking out for those men who would assist him. He would make statements like, "I'm so much thankful for those of you, men and women, anybody who would come and assist me." And he, perhaps most notably, was the Sarat Purnima, the first day of Kartik, 2008, where he said that I'm going to join Krishna and dance with him in the Rasa dance, and anyone who has assisted me in this lifetime will also go with me. So that was Aindra's love, that was his offer of eternal camaraderie and friendship, which many devotees took that invitation, and it's very clear that with someone like him, Aindra, making such a statement, you fully believed it to be true, that the power of his words definitely carried the authority and the ability to make it true. That's the ultimate caring, that Aindra wanted you to go back home, back to Godhead with him.
But once he does something, he sticks to it till it's finished. That golden temple, that flatbed truck, I don't know, it took him months, before he could get it to work, and put it together. It was like, and it was all, but yeah, he definitely, he would chastise. I mean, when the time was needed. I remember he chastised Nitai one time. It was really funny because this is a special lila, I also found it strange. One day I heard Nitai, every day he sits behind the harmonium, and what does he sing? It's just Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's all he would sing, And then Aindra, one time he asked him, "Why are you doing this?" "Yeah, I want to, just chant pure, all these ragas, they are making me, they are too much for my mind, and And then Aindra said, "You're not chanting these ragas for your mind, you're chanting them for Krishna. It's for Krishna, not for you, So then finally Nitai is singing his usual, routine, because it was also getting boring, This guy could sing some nice tunes, why is he doing that, Why is he only singing this one melody, So yeah, Aindra, he was always, always arranging things, according, so it fits together, like, a lot of times he would tell Nanda Chaitanya, "Give the madanga to me and you got to sing," because he was better at singing at the time. Or, when I joined the 24-hour Kirtan, he noticed I like to sing, Rag Malkuns, it's like the pentatonic, like blues raga, where the blues actually came from. So he said, "Okay, we put you in the evening and the night because I know you like to get into this type of chanting, So like he was always taking care of it, and we also cooked our own feasts a lot in the ashram during special occasions. He was really. I remember once I made some fried noodles for him. Because I'm coming from an Indonesian family, so we have this Asian type of cooking. And Aindra said, "Well, this is 10 times better than spaghetti." He said, It's like, of course, the Italian devotees, they were insulted, they were thinking, "No, this is the best." They would, they would argue, "No, we're the originals," I said, "No way." I said, and because they used to bring this to the ashram, They would cook for us, the Italian devotees, cook spaghetti for us or whatever, They used to call it Gandharva Loka. The devotees would come there, and take good care of us. So, yeah, definitely. I remember he liked to, he used to buy this dry ginger or fried ginger with black pepper and black salt, and he'd take it for his voice because he had a lot of problems maintaining his voice. He had a whole medicine cabinet on his harmonium sometimes, especially in the winter, because to keep the voice warm. to keep it going. So, yeah, he allowed me, he gave me more freedom because I remember Nepali devotee Ananda Chaitanya, he always wanted to take tabla lessons, but Aindra never let him, you know. But when I wanted to take tabla lessons, he just let me go, whatever, you know. It's funny, you know.
Well, I mean, even the reason he left New York was because he had a fabulous program, like we're doing Harinam Sankirtan here in New York City now, and we see how wonderful it is. It's just like a perfect situation. But even today, we're still having trouble getting the greater community of devotees in the New York area to, in a big way, cooperate together to make this Harinam Sankirtan as powerful and as beautiful as it could be or should be. So when Aindra was doing it in New York, the movement had more or less wholesale gone off track from doing Harinam Sankirtan, and at least in North America, even book distribution. And Aindra was very much disappointed in getting proper participation. That's the reason that he left the program and went to Vrindavan. And, there's recordings of Aindra himself telling the story of how he started up. It was very difficult. The authorities wouldn't even give him money to buy a mridanga to begin with. And he had no assistance. He went down into the temple room. It wasn't a 24-hour kirtan then. He was just trying to have like a daytime kirtan. He'd bring like a basket of instruments, his harmonium and mridanga, just himself. And if anybody just was walked by or happened by, some visitor to the temple, a pilgrim, an old Baba, hey you, I yeah, come over here, sit down, play that instrument. I don't know how to play it. Well, play it anyway, And in Aindra's words, just to show everybody that there was some type of happening going on every day. And also, Vrindavan back in the mid-'80s was very lightly visited. It was still very much the pristine kind of almost forgotten place. So the book and Mahaprashadam stalls in the back of the temple room would play cassettes over amplified speakers, and I would have to get into arguments with them to tell them to turn it off because we're trying to do kirtan here, and they would say, well, what kind of kirtan is that, you want to play some nice thing that attracts people. But anyway, slowly but surely, different devotees joined, tried to help Aindra, and so much so that fairly quickly, within like 6 months, from like March 1986 to September, October of that year, they established the 24-hour kirtan as an actual functional entity that would keep kirtan going 24 hours a day. And, so many struggles were there from the physical elements. It was very hot. Aindra had a light-skinned body. He would get heat rash, prickly heat, and there wasn't air conditioning or even air coolers. There wasn't proper generators for dealing with the cutoff of the electricity. And Aindra was living on the 3rd floor of the Gurukul building. In his words, like turning on the fan, blowing that hot air from the ceiling of the 3rd floor in the summertime was like, like having a fire-breathing dragon blowing on you, And, devotees coming and going. Also, for foreign devotees, non-Indian devotees, there's always visa problems. Aindra himself, he had to leave India in 1994 to go to Nepal to get a new visa after being there for 8 years. And that was actually the only time that he had to leave Vrindavan. That's when he started his Shalagram expansion. He brought back 30 or 40 shalagrams at that time. Actually, Aindra's desire to get citizenship was based on a very strong desire to never have to ever leave Vrindavan. And of course, that was one of the main reasons for not wanting to leave Vrindavan, beyond his own personal attachment to Radha Shyama was that he could protect the Harinam program. We saw many devotees as Vrindavan expanded and different buildings and housing projects and land was acquired and built will get their own places. But Aindra, practically speaking, was the only Prabhupada disciple that remained living in that Gurukul building. And one of the main reasons, he said, was I have to be right here so I could hear the kirtan. You know, before there was radio, you know, that I have a radio, you can hear the live broadcast from the temple and what to speak. They even have the webcam. You can turn on your computer and you can hear the kirtan right now, wherever you are in the world. So he wanted to hear, the only way he could know what was going on was to hear it through his window when he was in his room. And many times, if the kirtan stopped or if there was something unauthorizedly happening, he'd just race right down the stairs and just be right there, Johnny, on the spot, to correct it or to make it happen right. And then the ever-changing management of ISKCON Vrindavan, different policies were there. You know, like every department should pay rent for the rooms. And, you know, the 24-hour kirtan department was not a money-making department, you know, what to do. And Aindra was faced with having to accumulate money to pay for rent and pay for prasadam and so many things. And all the austerity he underwent to make Vrindavan mellows, Chintamani Nam. Practically speaking, you know, all the anxiety and austerity that he took was on behalf of making the 24-hour kirtan department a complete success.
Like, you know, I remember some devotee, he gave me what they call this cut, you know, that they offer to Krishna, this oil, you know, scented oil, you know. And devotees that left, you know what I did with it? I took the scented oil and I closed one nostril and sniffed it, you know, like it was drugs or something, you know. They were laughing, you know, but then I realized, actually, we have to be desperate, you know, just like somebody who's desperate, somebody who's like, you know, hooked on it. We have to get hooked on Krishna like that, because he's taking us out of the, like he took me out of these hellish streets of New York, you know, somehow or other, you know, and so many people, you know, but not everybody gets that. And directly next to Aindra playing Madanga, right, as a new devotee, actually a bhakta, you know, and this is quite unlimited mercy. We cannot, I say we cannot grasp it. What he was on the planet, we cannot appreciate. But when somebody leaves, and immediately, I was very shocked, of course, to hear about 2010. You know, I was just putting something on YouTube, you know, from Kirtan, and then some devotee said, "Oh, sorry, but you're lost," you know. And I was saying, "What are they talking about? What loss? I didn't lose anything," you know. And then later on, I heard the news, you know, and I was like devastated. You know. I was on my way to Bali. You know, and then when I was in Bali, we also celebrated a lot, spoke a lot about Aindra Prabhu, you know, and his Baba mood, you know. Definitely he was in that mood, but what we call the Baba mood or whatever you want to call it, you know, Bhajananandi. I remember once he asked me, would you like to manage the 24-hour kirtan so that I can do my bhajan, you know, just get absorbed. I said, I would like to, but I'm not that kind of, I say, a manager type of person. I'm also into bhajan, you know. It's very important. Your own bhajan, your individual bhajan plays a big role, even as a preacher, you know. So it's very important to cultivate that. But one thing for sure, he did give an example of the Yuga Dharma, and of course, he also distributed books, and he did the service, in the West, and I was amazed that he stayed in Vrindavan that long. I mean, I was there for some time, but the time just went by so fast, because there you don't have any conception of time. In Vrindavan, you only need to sleep maybe 2-3 hours. That's okay, You try this in the West, you'll be dead. It's like but there it's like that. It's the sweetness. If it wasn't for this 24-hour kirtan, what service would I do in Vrindavan? I mean, I would be afraid to do any service. All the reactions you can get, chanting the holy name. It's like it's the only thing you can do where you actually feel safe.
Unless we're fully self-realized, we're invariably materially attached, which makes us, disqualified or unfit to truly value the association of a pure devotee when they're present. So, a large part of serving and trying to associate with a departed spiritual master, Vaishnava, pure devotee when they leave, is a very powerful process of purification, transformation. It's a very, for one who's sincere and accepts and wants to continue their Krishna consciousness, they have to accept the powerful anartha nivritti process that fire of separation will put them through. So, in the case of someone like Aindra, who was so amazing and advanced that, practically speaking, it was beyond the belief, the position that he had attained or the level that he was on, to most devotees. Oftentimes, pure devotees are misunderstood, neglected, or even offended. Ultimately, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said this material world is not a fit place for a gentleman. Why? Because somebody who's actually a gentleman, a paramahamsa, they're not meant to be in this world. So Aindra very strongly desired to go back home, back to Godhead, to be with Radha and Krishna, to serve them eternally. He always was very keen to recognize the compromised position of having a material body and being in the material world. He wanted to rectify the condition of himself, in his own words, having a rotting stool bag-like body of an Aindra Das as soon as possible. He would even say, back home, back to Godhead, ki. The sooner the better, ki. As soon as possible, ki. So we always have to remember, we're talking about loving devotional service with Krishna. That means a reciprocation. Samoham sarvabhuteshu, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, 29th verse of the 3rd chapter. Prabhupada says, in the impersonalist philosophy there is no reciprocal relationship, but in the personal philosophy there is. So Krishna, from his side, wants someone like Aindra back home, back to Godhead, also as soon as possible. We want to have a proper crew here. We want to have properly qualified devotees here to conduct the mission of Srila Rupa Goswami. Was established within the material world, the order to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya. We wish to have such devotees here, but Krishna wants qualified devotees with him. So we can temper our feelings of separation from Aindra by knowing that Krishna is very pleased and satisfied having Aindra with him at long last. There's many lessons to be learned. That ultimately, I think, is the main way to look at it. But on a lower level of looking, we should be very, very careful not to offend pure devotees and to be able to honor them when they're in our midst. And we have to do our level best individually and as a society to heed their instructions, their warnings, and accept their chastisements, knowing that they're for our betterment. Aindra, he was saying, I've said it so many times, I could shout it so loud till your ears pop off, and I'll probably keep telling you to the day, saying it till the day I die. Hari Nam Sankirtan. We have to place Hari Nam Sankirtan back into its rightful place of dignity in the forefront of this Hare Krishna movement. It's so essential for the proper growth of this movement. Otherwise, we get a deformed child. We don't get the desired result. Aindra would say, I'm just as sinful as everybody else. I'm nobody special. But I have the experience of doing 10, 12, 14-hour Sankirtan days for years and years. You gain that experience and see what happens to you. So Aindra's most powerful and important lasting legacy for everyone is to take up Harinam Sankirtan. It's not Aindra's idea alone. It's not even just Prabhupada's idea alone. It is the conclusion of all the acharyas and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. This is the way to do it. So if we want to remember Aindra, we want to hope to gain his association again and be with him in the Nitya Navadweep and Nitya Nikunj of Radha and Krishna eternally, then while we're in this world, we should perform as much Harinam Sankirtan as possible. It's a very easy thing to understand. We just have to do it. We're not meant to become jnanis, we're not meant to become yogis, and we're certainly not meant to become karmis. We're meant to become Shuddha Prema Nam Bhaktas. Hare Krishna. Shripad Aindra Prabhu Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.
Yeah, this was the melody he wanted me to play Esraj for, you know. Actually, I picked it up at one point. It's a very sad tune, but it reminds me much of him. Oh, I have to move the microphone back a little bit. Okay. It's like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,